Shalom Akim, all praise and glory to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem, Makakodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone. Salutations to you, Akim, doing the work in truth and sincerity. And this is a video basically about Esau's New Year, because this is not our New Year. And of course, I'm going to bring out scriptures proving that this coming up date, January the 1st, is not our New Year. But on top of that, you Jakes shouldn't even be celebrating this unholy day, one of Esau's holidays anyway. And a lot of brothers, even some sisters, is coming out with this information. Of course, I was inspired by the brother GMS Hawaii Howada, who was inspired by one of the elder brothers. I believe it's in New York, if I'm not mistaken. I forget his name. We mentioned it this weekend, but anyway, he was inspired by one of the other brothers, and this grim history of Esau's New Year, it just has to come out. I mean, I never celebrated it anyway since I came into the truth, that is. And, to find out this history, that's just more reason not to celebrate Esau's wicked holidays, man. Whether it be Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of these wicked holidays has some cruelty to it for us, So, and I'm gonna read most of this article. I mean, and matter of fact, I put the link in the description box, Lord willing, of this article as well for you brothers that just want to read the whole thing. I'm gonna probably leave out only a couple of paragraphs, but yeah, I'm gonna read most of this article and get some scriptures on it, and get some scriptures proving that our holiday is not the first of year for us is not the first of year, is not the same as Esau's first of the year. So, starting with the title, the slaves dread New Year's Day the worst. The grim history of January the 1st. Americans are likely to think of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day as a time to celebrate a fresh start that a new year represents. But there is a troubling side to the holiday's history. In the years before the Civil War, the first day of the new year was often a heartbreaking one for enslaved people in the United States. In the so-called African American community, New Year's Day used to be widely known as Hiring Day or Heartbreak Day, as the African American abolitionist journalist William Cooper Nell described in it, because enslaved people spent the New Year's Eve waiting, wondering if their owners were going to rent them out to someone else, thus potentially splitting up their families. And renting out of slave labor was a relatively common practice in the antebellum South, and a profitable practice for white slave owners and hirers. Hiring Day was part of the larger economic cycle in which most debts were collected and settled on New Year's Day. And Alex McCrossan, an expert on the history of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and a professor of history at the Southern Methodist University, who writes about Hiring Day in the forthcoming book, Time's Touchstone, The New Year in American Life. Some enslaved people were put up for auction that day and held under contracts that started in January. These transactions also took place all year long, and contracts could last for different amounts of times. These deals were conducted privately among families, friends, and business contractors. In other words, when Edomites went to negotiate this on Hiring Day to sell you Jakes off or to rent you Jakes out, you had no parts of it. They went to talk about it, and then you just knew on January 1st it's time for you to go, and you was packed up to leave by January 2nd. And slaves were handed over in town squares, on court steps, and sometimes simply on the side of the road, according to divided mastery, a slave hiring in the American South by Jonathan D. Martin. According to the cruelty of hiring day, accounts of the cruelty of hiring day come from the records left by those who secured their freedom, who described spending the day before January 1st hoping and praying that their hirers would be humane and their families could stay together. Which, you know, even Esau don't have no mercy on Jake. So all the praying that Jake did back then, no, Esau didn't care. You already knew what was up, pretty much. Of all days in the year, the slaves dread New Year's for the worst of any. A slave named Lewis Clark said in an account in A slave named Lewis Clark said in an 1842 account, "On New Year's Day, we went to the auctioneer's block to be hired to the highest bidder for 1 year." Israel Campbell wrote in a memoir published in the 1861 in Philadelphia, in which he describes being hired out for 3 times. That's where the saying comes. That's where the saying comes from, that what you do on New Year's Day, you'll be doing all the rest of the year. So now you know where that saying comes from. What you do on New Year's Day, you'll be doing all for the rest of the year. Because once you were hired out on hiring day, basically separated from your family in slavery, you was gonna be doing whatever the hell that new master had you doing for the rest of the year. And like this account say, he was hired out 3 times. So at least 3 years in a row, he was gone, man. So that's where that saying comes from. What you do on New Year's Day, you'll be doing all the rest of the year, is a slave saying. Because they were separated from their families, going to a new hiree. And most of them never seen their families again. A former slave known as Sister Harrison said in an interview in 1937, Harriet Jacobs wrote a particularly detailed account in The Slave's New Year's Day chapter of her 1861 autobiography, Incidents in Life of a Slave Girl. Hiring day at the South takes place on the 1st of January. On the 2nd, the slaves were expected to go to their new masters. Man, hey. And that is a quick transition. The 1st of January, you sent to them auctioning blocks so Esau can make some more money, separated you from your families. And then on the 2nd, hey, you don't got no time to say goodbye. Pack your shit and get the fuck out. That's how Esau was treating you. Not like the new Harriet Tubman movie, where he loved Harriet that and saved her, and then there were black slave catchers that there's no account of. First of January, on the 2nd, the slaves were expected to go to their new masters. She wrote, she observed a slave owner and farmers renting out their humane chattel for extra income during the period of cotton and corn harvest and the next planting season. From Christmas to New Year's, many families would wait anxiously to find out whether they would be rented out and to whom. On New Year's Day, at the appointed hour, the grounds were thronged with men, women, and children waiting like criminals to hear their doom pronounced, Jacobs wrote. On one of these faithful days, Jacob saw a mother lead 7 children to the auctioning blocks. She knew that some of them would be taken from her, but they took all. The slave trader the slave trader who took the children wouldn't tell her where he was taking them because it depended on where he could get the highest price. Jacob said she would never forget the mother crying out, "Gone, all gone. Why don't God kill me?" This is the tender mercies of Esau right here. Wouldn't even tell her where he was taking them because it depended on the highest price. You Edomites got a lot to pay for, man. And you gon' pay that price. Jacob said he would never forget the mother crying out, "Gone, gone, gone, all gone. Why don't God kill me?" Enslaved people who attempted to resist going to their new masters were whipped and thrown in jail until they relented and promised not to run away during the new arrangement. Our older slaves were also particularly vulnerable, as Jacobs described one owner trying to hire out a frail, roughly 70-year-old woman because he was moving away. But the history of New Year's Day and American slavery is not all horror. Now, this is where I'm going to cut it off at, because this is where Esau tried to make himself look good. No, it was all horror. It was all horror. What about this is not horrible? Being sold away from your families every single year. Well, actually, Jake didn't have none of that, man. Jake didn't have no say in it. Jake didn't even know what was going on. You so-called Negroes, Indians, Latinos, hey, you didn't have no choice. All you knew that most likely you're gonna be sold off, and you hoping that the person that's renting you out wasn't no asshole and was gonna beat you every day, which he was an asshole, and he beat you every day, and you're away from your family and your children were separated. And this is all according to scriptures as well, man. This has all happened according to scripture. And now that's all I'm going to read of this article. I mean, now you know what January 1st is all about for these Edomites. So we're going to get a couple of scriptures. This is Habakkuk 2:16. "Thou art filled with the shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of Yahweh's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory." And that's for all you Edomites, man. Your history is shameful. You're ashamed of this horrible history, how you treated the so-called Negroes mainly, but also the so-called natives, whom the land you stole from them, which also can be equated to the Hispanics or Latinos, that's called today. And how could this be equated to the so-called Hispanic and Latinos? Because you were going through that over in South America by the Spaniards or Spanish-speaking Edomites, so you can understand, man. But this is what you Israelites had to look forward to every year, January 1st. But now you out here wishing everybody a happy New Year, thinking that same old saying, what you do on New Year's, you're going to do all year. That's a slave saying. Because whatever slave plantation you're on, you're sold to that year away from your family, that's what you're going to be doing all year. And maybe longer than that. You'll be lucky if you was to see your family ever again. Because like I said, most of the slaves never saw their families again. And this major auctioning happened on January 1st. Not to mention the atrocities that Esau was probably most likely doing in the early days of the slavery abolishment. when they were reveling and killing you Israelites on the street, hanging you and making postcards out of it during the 1800s, the mid and late 1800s, shortly after the abolishment of slavery, supposedly, which it never was abolished, it was only transferred. It was emancipated. Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves. In other words, he transferred ownership from the private owner to the government owners, to the government. So now the government owns the slaves. So we not free. That's why you Israelites don't have a land of your own. You don't run a land of your own. You don't have a land of your own. You don't have a so-called religion of your own. Nor do you have, do you even know your history? Because our history is the Bible. Our history is the scriptures. And this is just another part, another exposing of Esau's shameful history. This is Obadiah 1:1-9. And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. This is what these devils did to us, man. Slaves dread the New Year, the New Year's Day the worst, the grim history of January the 1st, man. And it's all the time that these histories are being brought up, man. A new shameful part of the history of slavery that these Edomites did to us Israelites. And that's not even to mention how they're the biggest identity thieves on the planet, trying to steal our identity, which they know don't belong to them by certain documents that their scholars put together themselves. Now, we're going to go into this brief history of Christmas. This is going to be very brief because basically, we say that Christmas is not the Lord's birthday, which Esau knows it's not. This is from the website Britannica Encyclopedia. And I'm just going to read a small excerpt from it. It says, Christmas, festival celebrating the birth of Jesus, which his name is not Jesus. He's not a so-called white man. His name is Yahushua, and he would be considered a so-called black man today. Christians' festival celebrating the birth of Jesus. The English term Christmas, Mass of Christ Day, is fairly recent and is of fairly recent origin. The earlier term Yule may have derived from the Germanic Jule or the Anglo-Saxon Yule, which referred to the feast of the winter solstice. Now, why is that important? Because this is all part of the feast of the winter solstice. When does winter end? It began Saturday, December the 21st, Lakia. Saturday, December the 21st. That's when winter began, and it ends March 19th, 2020. So, this is in the dead of winter. The beginnings of winter, within the second week of the season of winter. And the winter is the season where things die off. And this is where Esau's major holidays are. The winter solstice. That's all this is, the celebration of the winter solstice. The season of death, because Edomites is all about death. This is Deuteronomy, because this is the part right here where I'm proving that this is not our new year. Our new year is not in the middle of winter, the season where everything dies off. That is not you Israelites' New Year, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and natives. This is Deuteronomy 16:1. Observe the Mount Abib and keep the Passover unto Yahweh thy power. For in the month Abib, Yahweh thy power brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt. Yahweh thy power brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. And I put up, basically, I'm looking at the Hebrew in it. And I put this up so we can get the meaning of Abib.
Strong's H24, Aviv, Aviv.
And really, it's not Abib or Aviv. That's not how you pronounce it. It will be Abayab. Abayab. That's how you would pronounce it in the Paleo Hebrew or the ancient tongue. Abayab. And what does it mean? Fresh. Young barley ears barley. Basically fresh, young. Month of ear forming. The greening of crops, the growing of greens, month of Exodus and Passover, March, April. And basically with all these words really it's trying to explain spring, fresh, young, barley ears, month of ear forming. Basically when the plant's starting to bud. And that's the springtime. Abayab from unused root, meaning to be tender. When things begin to grow. That's basically what it is. And I also pulled up Exodus 12:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. So, to you Israelites, matter of fact, and then I'm going to read the third one. The third verse, speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take of them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. So basically, and that's I just read that because it says, speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, because the first of the year for us is the month Abib, which is spring. That's why I read, the meaning of Abib. Fresh, young, to be tender. Basically the month of budding, and of course it has March, April. Why March, April? Because in so-called March, April, that's the time of spring. That's springtime. That's when the fresh crops start to bud again. The month of the beginning of life, not the season of the beginning of life, not the season of death, where everything dies off. In spring, everything grows anew, starts afresh. So basically, this is the Lord saying, this shall be unto you the beginning of months, the beginning of the year. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. I mean, that's plain. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. Basically, springtime. That's when the first of the year comes. Not this January 1st that Esau celebrates, which is in the middle of the winter. The beginning of the winter, actually. And more proof, the Torah places great stress on the fact that the Passover occurs in the spring. In biblical times, the month in which the holiday fell was called Aviv, really Abayab, spring, because they know it means spring, a fresh or tender, spring. So that's the beginning of the year for you Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Indians, Latinos, or blacks, Hispanics, and natives, whichever one you prefer to be called today. You still Israelites. That's what you should prefer to be called, because all the rest is proverb and byword. Now the Passover for next year is what? Wednesday, starts Wednesday, April 8th, and ends Thursday, April 16th. Now I don't know how accurate this really is, but my point for bringing this up is it clearly starts in the spring. Clearly starts in the spring. What does it say in Exodus? This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. So it clearly starts in the 2 weeks after the beginning of spring. That's when the Passover starts. So 2 weeks prior to this date is the beginning of months, or the beginning of the year. This is 2 Peter 2, and I'm going to start at 2 Peter 3 and 4. And saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continued as they were from the beginning of creation. When the fathers fall asleep? During slavery. That's when the fathers fell asleep. Our forefathers forgot who they were during chattel slavery that Esau put onto us. Because before chattel slavery under Esau, us Israelites, we knew who we were. I mean, they didn't keep our identity from us. Some of us lost our identity being scattered across the four corners of the globe. However, they didn't keep our identity from us. The southern kingdom knew that they were Israelites for the most part, like during the Roman captivity, even though the northern kingdom didn't know at that time, because they were scattered to the furthest reaches of the planet, which was basically the western coast of the planet, which is known as the Americas today. For this they are willingly ignorant of, that by the word of the Most High the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water. And why did I read this? Willingly ignorant. Because at this point, you are just being willingly ignorant. You still calling yourself black. You still calling yourself Mexican. You still calling yourself Puerto Rican. You still calling yourself Indian or Native American, what have you. At this point, you're just being willingly ignorant, and you want to continue in this oppression. We are the Israelites. You so-called blacks, you so-called Hispanics, you so-called natives. We are the Israelites that the Bible speaks of. It is talking about us under the Most High Yahweh and his son Yahweh Shai. We are the Israelites. Not those people calling themselves Jewish. No, they are not the Israelites in the Bible. And there is a lot of proof on that. There are several videos explaining that they are not the real Israelites, the real ancient people that descend from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, Purim. Purim is a holiday, and you can read it in the Apocrypha. It's a holiday where the Israelites were almost put to death in a large number, and the Lord turned it around to where the Israelites' enemies were put to death for 2 days in a row, and we gave gifts for those 2 days to each other. It's called Purim. And it happens at basically the end of winter. 2 days around the time, around the middle of winter, or maybe the third week of winter or something like that, the middle of winter. That's when Purim happens. So I brought up Purim 2020. And basically, is like when you read here, the holiday of Purim falls on the Hebrew calendar date of Adar 14. Now, Adar 14 is basically the middle of Adar. And that's why I brought it up, the middle of Adar. So, I typed in Adar. Which month is Adar? Adar, Hebrew, Adaru, the 6th month of the civil year, and the 12th month of the ecclesiastical year in the Hebrew calendar. That's it, the 12th month of the ecclesiastical year. In other words, when winter, the last month, the 12th month of the year, when winter comes, that's Adar. And that's the celebration of Purim. That's the 2 days that you give gifts to each other. And that's an Israelite holiday. Not Christmas, the celebration of the winter solstice. Because, like I say, you Jakes, hey, if you don't want to get this information, you're just being willingly ignorant at this point. Because the information is there. The information is out there. So, Adar is the 12th month of the year, and it is roughly in March. Just like when you pull up, when winter ends about March the 19th. So in the middle of March is still winter time. In the beginning, like right now, we're in the beginning of winter, and it starts on the winter solstice, which is around December the 21st. That's when winter starts. So we're in the season of death where everything starts dying off. We're not coming into the beginning of the year. And of course, we know some of the horrors that these Edomites do in the beginning of the year. These are the celebrations. These are the holidays that they celebrate. So, for you Israelites out there, yes, we're not coming into the new year yet. We don't come into the new year until spring. And then, as far as gift giving goes, we celebrate that on the day of Purim, which is in the last month of the year, which is about in March, and it's in the middle of that month where Purim happens. Where we actually do gift giving because the Lord saved us from being destroyed and destroyed our enemies. So I think I got my point across. And with that, I hope you Akim out there were edified. All praise and glory to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai Bashim Kwakadas. Double honors to the elders of Great Millstone. Salutation to you, Akim, doing the work in truth, sincerity. Until next time, Shalom.